A little bit overdue with an update with the league, State of the Grid League. I've got some really exciting and fun things this year. Got some not so fun things this year, but getting geared up for the 2025 season. So great opportunity to give a little update of where we are. And the first thing that I think is most relevant to talk about is the championship match, the championship live stream. It's currently at about 344,000 views and still growing, all organic. And that's about double any other live stream that we've had to this point, which is obviously great growth. Very exciting. It's also more views than any single season in 2021 and 2022, all matches combined. So that's good stuff. Definitely going in the right direction there. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but one of the biggest is the fact that we continue to grow in awareness and our sport's engaging. We've kind of proven that at this point. So while that's amazing, the number of views and the view through was great, what I'm actually more proud of, because it was one of the objectives that we had going into 2024, which is to have more planning and anticipation around the matches and live streams overall. And so I'm going to put this stat up real quick that shows the week after our matches for the total season, but then also the championship. So week after the championship, a couple key metrics. One is the total watch time was 4x year over year, and the view duration was double. So that just shows a little bit more commitment from viewers and also obvious anticipation and planning around watching the match, even if it wasn't necessarily live, because this is the week after. And we've kind of seen time and time again that watching our matches tends to be after the fact, which is fine as long as they get watched. And, we've heard from other potential partners and existing partners that our content's kind of evergreen because you don't necessarily have to watch it live. Although, of course, we'd love to get to the point where people are anticipating and watching it live more often. But evergreen content is great and it's actually really valuable for a lot of platforms and people that want engaging content in general. So more on that to come, but we're obviously really excited and proud about these results, and it's a great meter of how the sport is doing from a growth perspective. We're going in the right direction. So that was number one. Following towards the end of the season, we had been investigating a fast channel partnership, and they had thrown a couple of our pre-existing matches up on their channel as kind of a test. And the test went really well. They said they were extremely happy with the results and are excited about a future partnership, which will be this year. So a fast channel is like what you see, it's like a Hulu. Hulu is a fast channel, but we have some sports oriented ones, and we're not going to name the name just yet because we want to make an announcement about it, but we do have a partnership in place. We're currently uploading content. They're excited. We're excited. So that's really good. Again, metric of sport growth to get more eyeballs on the sport, but also our sponsors and brand and partner brands. So very excited about that. So one of the tough parts of last year towards the end of the season is we had some community conflict around conduct amongst language and communication. And those kinds of things are inevitable as we grow. However, it created a great opportunity for us as team owners and as a league to put our heads together and really think through these situations and say, who are we? Who do we want to be? How do we handle these types of situations? And we actually made a lot of progress on that. And it's one of the more exciting things coming out of the off season that I'm excited to share more about. So really defining who we are, how we think, what our core purposes are, and how we handle some situations that can be, I don't want to say necessarily controversial, but you can have a lot of opinions about how to handle them. And we've kind of defined them as much as we can ahead of time. And so I think this will help create a North Star of how to think about a lot of different situations. And that does lead to some new rules. So we'll be rolling out some new conduct rules around in and out of competition that we put our heads together and talked about as team owner group and league. And we also have some really cool just roster based rules that we're going to be announcing that are brand new. I think will enhance the engagement of the sport. And while we're on the topic of roster rules, one of the things we haven't done well to this point that we want to invest more in this year in the whole media landscape of how we're going to present the sport is to focus a little bit more on roster rules. And we haven't really dug into them too much, even when we're presenting the live stream. And it's more of an opportunity for people to better understand why choices are made around what player is performing when. And it's actually a very strategic sport, even though it's very simple in nature. So you have a start line, finish line, work that needs to be completed in between. You have a team to be able to execute it. And who you bring in and when the substitutions are and things like that are all defined around a set of roster rules. And those roster rules right now are not well communicated anywhere. So we've updated our About Grid League page to include the roster rules, which is kind of step one. We're creating some video content around roster rules. And then we're also bringing in some new color commentators this year that we'll be announcing sooner than later that are very aware and well versed in the roster rules. you can imagine why. They're former players. So I'm super excited about that. I think it's going to add a whole new layer of commentary and kind of another level of understanding of the sport that we haven't really had present to this point. So kind of thinking of, our Tom Brady on the sideline walking through, or not necessarily in the booth, talking through the races and the matches. So more on that to come. So on the media side, we are ramping up some new options this year. Last year, live scoring was one big focus. We're going to be maintaining that live scoring in the live streams. And I think this year we're going to be refocusing a little bit on some of really what the sport was designed for, which is short form and social media in general. Our live streams are productions that take a lot of attention, focus, effort, investment, and we're kind of proud of where they are. We feel like they're serving a need, and we want to refocus on activating some new channels, meaning new social media channels, new types of media that kind of communicate the sport in different ways. So not just some of the movements and elements and races and things like that, but more about the sport itself. What are the inspirations behind the sport? What are the reasons for it to exist? Why do we care so much about it? And how did it go from essentially nothing in a gym to being viewed by hundreds of thousands of people, which is a pretty grand question to ask when you think about it, because we didn't have big names doing it right out of the gate necessarily. Our first couple of years, basically nobody outside of our region knew who the players were. And still the sport was able to grow in a way that, now it's viewed by hundreds of thousands of people in the live stream. So why is that? How has that come to be? What are the characteristics of the sport that allowed that to happen? Showcase that a little bit, talk a little bit more about it, and, that kind of thing. And then, of course, we're always looking to improve our ability to talk about and demonstrate who our players are, because they're amazing. They're incredible. The things they do on the grid are literally world class, and who they are as people is obviously super interesting. And the relationship between them, which is also something that's really unique to Grid League, specifically, romantic relationships, but otherwise as well. Because there are dynamics that exist in Grid League outside of romantic relationships that are completely unique to the sport, related to men and women, coaching, ownership, captains, leadership, all that kind of stuff. A couple other things on the media side. We've got some outside podcasts and video partners, not necessarily partners, but people that are working on the sport that is great. It's a great step forward, where we're going to be better communicating with them and creating channels for them to get insider information that they can then talk about, and then have things like pre and post game shows. That is a big focus this year. So hopefully we're able to make that come to fruition, and then hopefully have some external accounts in channels that continue to grow that will assist how we can, but obviously they're going to create their own commentary. So there's a very clear division between what the league is and their role. And our media guidelines around that is something that we do put out intermittently to players and in the insider group and things like that. But it's great to have more people with their attention on the sport, analyzing it, talking about what happened, talking about performances and things like that. So great step in the right direction. So when it comes to the teams themselves, we've had some big changes in the offseason. We've announced in 2024, Houston, who's doing an excellent job, has some incredible talent coming into the league under that team. And what's kind of cool about it is there's a lot of Texas-based talent and then kind of Western-based talent. So it's really integrating more of the Western part of the country than ever has before. And of course, Texas is kind of central south, but you know what I mean? It's expanding west. And they're doing an excellent job recruiting Colton Mortons. Colton joining that team is obviously a huge deal. We're super proud to have him involved. So congrats to them. The Venom moved from Daytona to Las Vegas, and they have also integrated some West Coast talent to the team, both locally from Las Vegas and otherwise in the West. And then the other kind of big news with teams is the Aces and the Lions merged. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The biggest one being that they knew each other fairly well, and Taylor has decided that is not going to be playing anymore and can't just coach the way that she is as a competitor. She's either got to be really, really in it or not in the competitive side at all. So she's going to maintain her involvement in the league and the sport, which obviously I'm super excited about. She's had massive influence on the sport overall. More announcements about that to come. But this does lead to a change that we're not so excited about related to all the teams, because we really hope to be at 10 teams in 2025, and we've kind of opted to keep it at 8 this year. And that's okay. I mean, not every plan is going to come to fruition, and it's not from lack of interest. We had, I think it was like 38 total applications for new teams last year. A lot of great options for new teams. They just didn't work out. And, some were on their side, not feeling like they were ready. Some were on our side, not feeling like they were ready. But one of the biggest focuses we have as a league is making sure that whoever does come in as a team owner fits the culture, fits the vibe, fits the priority. And so, when that's not there, then we won't make a deal. And the good news is that, we still have a lot of people from last year that are still working on integrating new teams. And we've had several applications this year already as well, with some great options. So pretty confident that we'll get a couple of new great option teams at the right time this year. And so looking forward to communicating about that when appropriate. And overall, I'm really excited about where we are as a league. Even though we're at 8 teams, we have 3 outside of Florida. We're moving incrementally to that more national presence that we wanted to get back to. And we always kind of said we wanted to do it at an appropriate pace and one that doesn't get too far out over our skis. And so I think we're doing that. And I think that's where we want to be. And of course, we have 2 matches in Texas this year, which is also essentially half of the regular season outside of Florida and in our new state, which is honestly, Texas has been one of the most supportive and naturally integrated states in the country outside of Florida, probably the most outside of Florida. It just seems to fit there. People love the sport. Football, CrossFit is pretty wide reaching in Texas. So excited to have a couple of important matches there, and it should be a lot of fun. So if you watched this far, thank you so much. And we're looking forward to a great 2025, and we will see you on the grid.